In today's gospel, we get a little peek at how special St. Peter really is. Because for all of his flaws, St. Peter was a deeply faithful disciple of Christ. On this particular day, he had been fishing all day long and he caught nothing. That happens. So he's with the other guys on the shore. They're cleaning their nets. They're wrapping up their workday. And then, for the most part, Jesus just kind of wanders up and says, "Dude, try one more time." In my imagination, Jesus says "dude" a lot. I don't know why. But, he gives a few specific instructions, but for the most part, Jesus says, "Try it one more time for me." Now, bear in mind that he just said this after a long day of boring, frustrating failure. Think of what that would feel like if you did nothing right for your entire workday. Like everything went wrong. You didn't achieve a single thing at the office. And as you're packing up your stuff, your boss comes up to you and says, "Hey man, I could really use you to stay for another hour. We've got some stuff we need to take care of and I'd like to get it done today." If it was truly your choice, if there were no negative consequences for saying, "No thank you, I want to go home," how many of you would tough it out and stick around at work for your boss's benefit? I don't think the majority of you would do so. And regardless of how many of you would do the right thing in the eyes of your boss, in all likelihood, I would not be part of that group. If I was in that situation, I can only imagine myself saying, "Sir, thank you. It's been a horrible day. I am eating an entire pizza. I'm going to bed at 8:30, and I'm just going to try again tomorrow." St. Peter doesn't say that. Peter trusts Jesus over his own natural instinct, which is probably telling him, "Go home and give up. It's been a horrible day." So that trust of Peter, where he's just willing to trust Jesus on a limb, that is a sign of real character. That is a sign of spiritual fortitude. And it's one of the big reasons, if you ask me, it's one of the big reasons that Jesus picked Peter to be the rock on which he built his church. So on this little subtopic of overcoming our negative sort of instincts and inclinations, they taught us something pretty interesting at one of those personality/life goals seminars. We have to go to those every once in a while. And a few years ago, they warned us against a common flaw of a person's thinking, and they explained it with the analogy they called the grasshopper and the lid. So imagine you catch a grasshopper. You put him in a mason jar. You put a lid on the jar. Air holes included, of course. So you screw in the jar, and that grasshopper is going to hop up. It's going to try to jump out of the jar, because what else is the grasshopper going to do? And he's going to bonk his little head on the lid, and he's going to stay in the jar. And he's going to do that for a while. But after a certain amount of time, the grasshopper is going to stop trying, and it's just going to sit there in the jar. Apparently, at that point, you can unscrew the lid, take it off, and the grasshopper will just stay in the jar. That poor little guy failed to escape so many times, he doesn't even bother anymore. He just assumes the lid is still there, even though one more hop would be enough to secure his escape. Now, I don't know if that's actually true. I never did that experiment myself or anything like that. But what the seminar was saying is that all of us, at some point in life, could very well be that little grasshopper. We can become so accustomed to frustrating failure that we start to believe that success is impossible. We start thinking things like, there's no point in trying because failure is automatic. And we need to remember that at least sometimes in life, the reasons we expect to fail are little more than illusions. To be sure, there are plenty of real-world examples to back up that lesson, but I'm going to go for a big one and summarize an episode of Friends while I'm at it. Season 9, Paul Rudd, for the record, as if it matters. A person gets married. They have huge marital problems, and they get divorced. Then they meet someone new, someone totally unlike their ex. They start to date. They fall in love. The new person wants to get married. The person with a history says, "No, thank you. My first marriage was so painful, I guess I've lost my faith in the whole thing. Let's just live together." If you were listening to that conversation, you could probably predict what the other person would say. Because in all likelihood, they'd say something along the lines of, "Honey, I am not your ex. We are exactly nothing alike, and I am not going to hurt you the way she did. But you need to take a risk, take a chance on me, and you need to resist the temptation of judging me by the actions of another from your past." Like St. Peter, that person will show great spiritual fortitude if they're willing to risk marriage again after a painful past relationship. But all things being equal, I'd say that is the right decision. Because who knows, perhaps the lid on that jar was only there for a little period of time. There we go. Jesus made St. Peter a fisher of men. He assigned him far greater responsibility than he ever had before. And perhaps part of that reason is that St. Paul almost always will act on faith over his natural inclination. He perseveres, and although he is occasionally cowardly, he doesn't have a 100% track record after all, he never actually abandons Christ, because he always found his way back. He never gave up on Christ, even when that would be the easier thing to do. So may all of us, here and now today, grow in spiritual fortitude in the same way that we too may be fishers of men and be good shepherds to those in our lives who depend upon our prayers as well as our actions.